Hey, happy Sabbath, everyone. I'm glad to be able to talk to you folks at the Upstairs Church again today. I just want to lean into a couple of really critical principles from our talk. So just remember that Jesus began this talk in chapter 5, verse 2 or 3, when he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God." And the heart of Jesus' message there is just simply this, that he wants you to live a with God kind of life. That's what being in the kingdom is. It's living a with God kind of life right now. We don't have to wait for heaven someday to do that. We can have this intimate conversational relationship with God on an everyday basis. And he says that to the Anawim. Remember, blessed are the poor, the Anawim, the people that everybody else thinks don't deserve that relationship with God. God says, it's you that I want. You think you're a throwaway person, you're somebody that you're on the outside. Jesus says, I want you. I need you in my kingdom. His invitation is that we'll have a blessed life, a life that's actually good. And so, what I want to zero in on today is that the motivation of every command that God has ever given was simply his heart and his desire to protect and to provide you a life, to help you live a life that's truly blessed, that's truly good. And he's saying that the only way to do that is if you do that with me. And as we begin to look at these commands, these things that Jesus is contrasting today, it began with, you've heard it said, you shall not murder. But Jesus says, but I say unto you, even if you have anger in your heart, that it puts you in serious, it jeopardizes your experience or your relationship. It hurts you. And so, first of all, let me just say this, that God's greatest concern is not your outward behavior. God's greatest concern is for your heart. And so, this word raka that we looked at in the verse, raka was actually less of a word and more of a sound. It's a sound that goes like this. It's when you're coughing up phlegm from your throat so that you can actually spit it. And back in the Jesus day, when I looked at someone, when somebody looked at somebody else with contempt and hatred in their hearts, they would actually raka and spit on them. And raka just simply means this. Raka means you don't matter to me. What you think doesn't matter to me. What happens to you doesn't matter to me. Anger and contempt are evil twins. They're connected together. But here's the problem, you guys. The problem is that if I'm in a strained relationship with you, if I think like God thinks, I have to see you as one who's loved and cared for by God. I have to see you as somebody that has value. And so I can't hate you. I can't continue nurturing contempt in my heart for you. So my only choice is to choose to not think like Jesus thinks. I have to choose to see you as something less than what God sees you. And that's what raka was. Raka in you meant that I saw you as the lowest possible form of human life, and I treated you as so. But here's what Jesus is saying in these verses. When you begin to treat another person different from what God says they are or what their value is to him, when we begin to treat them as objects or throwaway people to be used or abused or neglected as you see fit, ignored would be another good one. Jesus is simply saying, be careful. Because if you continue to treat people with unresolved anger and contempt, that has a way of backfiring on our lives. And the regret and the consequences go on and on and on. So I actually believe at the root of everything bad is unresolved anger and contempt. So let me share this illustration. Anger is to the heart when it feels attacked what pain is to your hand when you put it on a hot stove. Pain tells you that unless something changes, things are going to get a lot worse. And so when we feel pain, we remove our hand from that place that's burning it. God never intended for pain to go on and on and on endlessly. And that's the problem, my friends, with unresolved anger and contempt. Anger and contempt, unresolved, becomes like keeping your hand on the hot stove. They are destructive to your life. So the only answer to that is, this is why, Jesus says that when you have a relational problem, go and fix it quickly. Dallas Willard says non-forgiveness is a choice to keep a wound open and festering. And so I just want to end with this thought. I'm going to read something and then you're going to actually look at it later. It says this: Jesus never allows us to separate our worship of God from our treatment and interaction with people. We always appear before God in connection to our relationships around us. So here's the deal. Our relationships with each other cannot be separated from our relationship with God. When I hurt you, when I nurture hatred or contempt or anger toward you, it hurts my relationship not only with you, but with God and also with myself. It matters deeply to God how you're treating those who you don't like. So back in the day, all the religious systems cared about was whether you obeyed the rules. We all know people. You probably haven't ever actually murdered somebody, but you actually may be a very unlikable person. And so Jesus is simply saying, love one another as I have loved you, which means sacrificially. It doesn't matter to the world if we say we're followers of Jesus. What matters is if we're actually living out the commands of Jesus in our lives. Are you actually becoming today more and more like Jesus? One of the reasons so many people don't come to church is that they have not seen Christians who actually act differently than anyone else does. So if following Jesus doesn't change you at the deep heart level, the question is, what's the benefit? And so there is where we're going to have this powerful and critical question before you this week. Do you want to live like Jesus or not? Are you willing to come to Jesus and say, God, change my heart. Help me to give up my unresolved anger, contempt, so that I'm no longer hurting myself and others. And with that, I'm going to let you finish up your study. Thanks a lot. How did that sound?
Kind